I was just going to say about the limitations of the Welsh revival. As I said, it didn't really spread into England. Let's move that. Okay. The problem with the Welsh revival, okay, and with revival sometimes they do die out and they don't kind of sustain, and that's often not a problem. You know, we think there's a time of revival and it kind of dies away. But the problem with the Welsh revival was that, first of all, there was not a lot of solid Bible teaching during the revival. So new Christians were not really grounded. One of the things, the revivals are great, but then we need to ground people. I know that's one thing we do as Pentecostals. We major on, doctrine. Okay, this is a point, we're doing our Bible school, learning about the Bible, the Word of God. That didn't take place in the Welsh revival. There was a lot of experiential and a lot of changes in lives, but then a lot of people could drift away after a few years because there was then not a follow-up the Bible teaching. So that's a lesson really for revivalists today, that yes, we pray for revival, but we need to have things in place to ground folks when they get saved. Also, the First World War that came along 9-10 years later, and lots of young men were lost who had experienced revival, and perhaps have been used in that respect. Also, the other thing as well is that it was focused on Wales, and a lot of it was Welsh speaking. And in the Welsh communities, the Welsh language was very strong in those days, and lots of the areas, in fact, almost all the areas, towns and villages were impacted away from Cardiff, would tend to be mainly Welsh speaking, so of course it would not spill over into England for that reason. However, the impact of the Welsh revival was amazing. It did go worldwide, as I was saying before we got off there. So Canada was affected, America with the Azusa Street, Korea experienced revival, in 1997. South America, Brazil and Chile, there were revivals there. All these we traced to happened back in the 1904 Welsh revival. Azusa Street, of course, was impacted as well, and that's what we're going to move on to now, looking at the Azusa Street revival. Use of the Welsh revival encouraged many in Southern California who were praying to intensify their efforts. So the news of what happened in Wales had spread to California, and people began to pray even more desperately that the same thing would happen there. In 1907, and I guess many of you would know the story of Azusa Street anyway. We'll go through it, and hopefully we can bring out more things about it to expand our knowledge. 1907, a small church in Los Angeles saw the crowds grow in their meetings until the converted house they met in collapsed. So they moved into a vacated Methodist church on Azusa Street. To bring the revival which followed, people began speaking in tongues. And so this church, the Azusa Street Church, quickly became a revival centre, attracting Christians from around the world. The Pentecostal movement was born and became the largest growing Protestant movement of the century. Religion writers voted the Azusa Street revival as one of the 100 most important religious events of the millennium. Most important religious event of the millennium is Azusa Street. Let's focus more on actually the details of the revival. It's quite a bit up here. So we'll try and move on so we get all that in. So, the man who associated with the revival, just like the Welsh revival, we think of Evan Knox. With the Azula revival, we think of William Joseph Seymour. And now William Joseph Seymour was born to recently freed slaves in a town called Centerville in the state of Louisiana. He was greatly influenced by the holiness movement that swept America as a result of the Welsh revival. So here we see the link. The Welsh revival had come to America, it swept through America and launched what they call the holiness movement. His parents and he himself, Mr. Seymour, was very much influenced by this movement, holiness movement. It was while attending a black church, so a black church, or black majority church, African American church, in Houston, Texas, that Seymour witnessed something he had never before seen. He heard a woman praying in what seemed like another language. He heard a woman praying in tongues. That's the first time he witnessed this. It was widely held by holiness groups that that day that speaking in tongues was a sign that would accompany the arrival of the Gospels. Okay. Seymour sensed this woman had something he longed for but had not yet found. So he knew he had to talk with her. So the lady's name he spoke in tongues was called Lucy Farrow, F-A-R-O-W. And he spoke with her, and he learned from her that she had recently worked as a governess in a town called Topeka in Kansas. And she worked for a man who was called Charles Fox Parham. Parham was a white preacher who ran a holiness Bible school called Bethel College in Topeka. So Seymour set out for Topeka to speak to Parham. Okay. So when he found Parham, he begged him to be admitted into the school. Now, in making his request, Seymour was once again brought face to face with the realities of life in the South at the turn of the century. Because, of course, we have segregation. Whites and blacks were supposed to congregate together, okay? Or they this in different rooms or different buildings, okay? So here was a problem. Okay? Parham ran a Bible college, which was, white folks. Seymour, here was this black man, Seymour, wanting to be admitted. While Parham was always looking for students and welcomed the zeal of Seymour, Parham was also a sympathizer of the KKK. It's a Ku Klux Klan. You might think that's a bit of and this man here is a Christian, a man of God, yet he was sympathetic to the Ku Klux Klan. Of course, the white supremacist movement, and we all know the things they got up to. Okay. He was not sure, was Parham, whether he was ready to welcome a black student into his school. So Parham himself had prejudices. Okay. On the other hand, how could he turn him away? That just didn't seem to be the Christian thing to do either. So he arrived at a compromise. He would allow Seymour to listen to his lectures from a chair outside an open window. In the event of rain, Seymour would be allowed to move his chair into the hall, and the door would be left ajar so he could hear. Seymour agreed to the terms established and began attending Parham's lectures. Earnestly, he sought the baptism of the Holy Spirit, but without success. Seymour continued preaching at black missions while waiting on God for his own second blessing. A lady visiting from Los Angeles heard him preach in one of those meetings and recommended to him a pastor back home in California. And that recommendation led to an immediate invitation for Seymour to preach in a little storefront church on Santa Fe Avenue. At the first meeting, Sister Hutchins, who was the pastor of the church, recognized significant differences between the preaching of Seymour and her own view of the second blessing. She considered Seymour extreme in his doctrine of the Holy Spirit, and even perhaps heretical, and it was clear that the two could not continue to work together. When Seymour arrived at the church to preach at an afternoon meeting, he found the church door locked. He was no longer welcomed at that little church front spot on Santa Fe Avenue. Undismayed, undaunted, Seymour agreed to preach in a home on Bonnie Brae Avenue. Now, several people from Sister Hutchins' church attended the meeting, along with other people, in this neighborhood north of Temple Street, a shabby neighborhood around one neighborhood. Most of the congregation was composed of domestic servants and women who took in laundry. As word of the home meeting spread, the crowds grew. People came to hear a preacher who had never spoken in tongues tell the blessing of God come soon when all would have this unique gift. As Seymour was preparing to go to the meeting on April the 9th, 1906, Edward Lee told him he had received a vision. He claimed the apostles had come to him and told him how to receive the gift of tongues. So together the men prayed, then made their way to the meeting. That night, the power fell on those assembled. Several people, including William Joseph Seymour himself, began praising God in an unknown tongue. As news of the outpouring spread throughout the community, the little home on Bodygray Avenue soon became too small. The weight of the crowd gathered at the porch was outside so great that it broke. While there was no serious injuries, something obviously had to be done. An abandoned church building at 312 Azusa Street, available Methodist Church. And actually the building had been used recently as a warehouse and livery stable horses. The building was swept out and Seymour's apostolic mission moved to their new home on Easter Sunday, April 14th, 1906. Seymour preached apocalyptic message, assuring his listeners the end of the world was at hand. It was his view that Jesus was coming very soon, judge the world and establish his kingdom on earth. Prior to this coming, there would be a latter rain outpouring of the Holy Spirit. The evidence that the Spirit had come would be speaking in tongues. Everything seemed to be happening just as Seymour had said. Then, the morning of April the 18th, 1906, 4 days after the Apostolic Faith Mission had been holding services on Azusa Street, and 9 days after the first manifestation of tongues, the earth itself shook. A major earthquake along the San Andreas Fault almost completely destroyed the city of San Francisco. This is the earthquake of 1906. Its impact was felt throughout Southern California. And as the ground shook beneath their feet, lives of many who had ignored Seymour's message were shaken also. It was almost like this was a divine sign from God for those who were doubting, for those who were hesitant. As a result of that, daily services at Azusa Street quickly filled with both blacks and whites seeking both salvation and the baptism of the Holy Ghost. So, in many ways, the earthquake was a spur. People began to, go rushing to church. I'm sure Seymour was preaching that.
Oh no.